Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's your favorite paranormal investigator here. My name is Tim Sedano. This is Paranormal Insight, if you can see my finger. And on today's show, we're going to continue what we were talking about last week, the interaction between Hollywood, and not just Hollywood, but we're going to focus there because I'm an American. That's kind of what I know. And I'm also a filmmaker, so I'm a little more in tune, I guess you could say, with that particular studio system and production system. So anyway, that's kind of where my authority on this is coming from. Also, wanted to let everyone know that if you want to watch us live, please do so. Let me show you where to go. You're going to go to YouTube like you normally do. You're going to find paranormal_insight with the green PI. And then, I hit the button again. And then you're going to go to /streams. Now, on the site, you hit the live tab. So there's videos and shorts and all that. Hit the live tab. I don't know why it keeps timing out, but it I guess I had the timer set. That's what. Sorry. You hit the live tab, or if you want to just type it in all together, you go /streams after paranormal_insight. And that is how you take a look at stuff live. Join us in the chat for each show. And so a little housekeeping there. That's fantastic. And done and out of the way. No one in the chat yet, but I welcome you. We are live. It's going to be a fun show. So let's dive in. A little bit of a minor recap. Last week, we talked about the suspects, the usual suspects in our, alien, non-human entity, visitors. Those who come to us mostly, not only in the historical record, but in the more modern record. So last week we talked a little bit about Spielberg and what he included in his pantheon. Mostly it's the Greys, which is fascinating. And we'll dig into that a little bit more later on. So these guys, if you can see me moving around my stuff here, largely, these guys here, this is a poor rendition of a Grey, by the way. I asked AI to help me out on it. They gave me this. I mean, I got Ragnar Lothbrok here as a Nordic because it just didn't know what I was asking for. Anyway, so the Greys we pretty much have covered. Up first, we're going to talk about the things we also have relatively covered, not only in our actual history, but in film and television. And that is the reptilian. We'll move on here. Whoops. If I click the right button, it'll work. I think. Maybe. I don't know. Let's go. I may have to dig back out, jump into the navigator here, and go from there. Okay. If I go down. Okay, excellent. Okay, you know what? I'm sorry. We're not going to start at the insectoid. We're going to start out with the Nordic, because we don't see them that much. So we'll go more or less in order, except we're skipping the Greys toward the end. Okay, so the Nordic, the big blonde people, the perfect specimen. We heard Benedict from last week, that guy who was on that interview, the Jesse Michaels show. Excellent recall, Tim. So we're going to talk about a little bit about the Nordic, and AI came up with this image when I asked for Nordic aliens and gave me 4 blonde models, female models, beautiful renditions of the human specimen, and that is what they're described as. But there's also the male version of that too, so they're not all female. Some would find that a pity. But where have we seen these guys represented? Well, let me show you. There's a show back in the 90s, I believe it was, maybe early aughts of 2000, of the 21st century. Unfortunately, I don't remember, and I didn't note it, called Defiance. And Defiance was kind of like first contact gone wrong, because these alien ships show up and they send down these probes and they start terraforming. That is completely adjusting the planet's crust and and the life forms and all the rest of it, and to suit their needs. We had a response system in place in this somewhat futuristic, you know, telling of the human experience. So this is based on the possible future. We shot these ships down, stopped the terraforming about halfway, but it doesn't matter. The entire Earth was sent back to the third world, various colonies of these aliens, and that's what they were. They were, hey, Heidi's in with us, woohoo! And much love from California too, Heidi, and myself, of course. So anyway, Defiance was this kind of quasi post-apocalyptic thing, the apocalyptic portion being brought on by these would-be colonists that were kind of shot down and forced to crash land and live among us instead of us living among them. Now, you will notice these people over here, indicated by the red circle. These are called the Castathans. Interesting backstory on the aliens. There's another alien right here. We didn't really get into her that much. She's kind of, her and her people are kind of like Klingons without the bumps on their head. That's pretty much all you need to know. And then there's human survivors here. Some are more in league with working with the aliens. This guy over here led a rebel kind of a thing to get rid of the aliens and send them home. I think she was kind of playing both sides against the middle, and she ran like a brothel kind of, I don't know what the hell to call it. But anyway, our focus is on the Nordic types, and here we have those folks over here. They were called the Castathans. Now, in my personal estimation as a film writer, and if I'm going to be completely and totally critical of this show, the name is what got me more than anything. Castathans. Because they operated on a caste system. Now, that in and of itself is kind of silly. However, if you dig into the would-be lore of actual Nordic types who have roughly this kind of look to them, although I don't know that they're wearing a quasi-Midwestern garb, per se. They're kind of like more in robes kind of a thing. I think they've been described as that. Pardon my chewing. I'm a little hungry still. So these Castathans had a caste system which echoes what the actual Nordics had been reported to have in their society. They have a caste system, and they believe very, very much, according to reports, and that I'm talking about the real ones now, are reported to be very much also, following a caste system of some sort, and they're very, 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 very much in line with following rank, including military rank. So these various peoples here of the Castathan race, you'll notice some of them had red hair. They were noble kind of slaves. They had a nobility to them, but they were still kind of in service to those who held higher station, which is this guy right here. And then there were the religious leaders. They had these Spartan-like masked fronts here. You can see half of one there. Those are kind of like priests of the whole thing, or I guess if you're going to call it a religion, you can, but it followed more of a council of ethics and mores and morals. which you could say, oh yeah, Tim, that's a church. You just described it. And I was like, well, yes and no. The way they had it laid out was a little bit different. These are kind of a cross between priests and police, if you will. So it was very much it was a nice design, but now here we get into the conspiracy portion of this whole thing. Was this Hollywood telling us without telling us? For my money, yes. I think so. Because, if you listen to the whistleblower reports on these guys, we're talking about virtually the same creatures. We just happened to put them in a situation we didn't think they could really adapt to. And that's half the problem. Throughout this entire series of Defiance, there's an overwhelming, and this is kind of where the rebellion comes in, there's an overwhelming need for these aliens to reassert their dominance. And they were kind of the leaders of all these different alien groups that came in these huge ships. And they came here because their planet was destroyed, I think, by a natural calamity, something like a nova or something like that. So they gathered up everyone in their system. They completely colonized their own little solar system, as I recall. Grabbed everyone up as much as they could, packed them in as super tight as they could, warped over the Earth and tried to turn Earth into their planet, basically. Mutated some of our animals. Wolves suddenly had 8 feet and stuff like that, but they were still wolves. But they were bug-like. It's weird. They had this insect base to their animal structure. Anyway, I digress. When it comes to the people themselves, the Castathans, poor naming on my part. I'm sorry. They could have come up with something way different. And if they're going to impose a society that's actually out there, come closer. Come closer, I say. Maybe Castathans is closer. I mean, it's so on the nose to being a people that follow a caste system. That's my largest complaint. But, again, I guess I digress. And I want to add one more thing. There were, I think she was the mayor. Julie's name escapes me. She was like the insider. She was playing both sides against the middle, so she was following the current law and order types, and she was also kind of giving the rebels inside information. This was the police officer. I think they called him it was like constable or something like that, like Odo on DS9. But he was the chief or the sheriff or what have you of this town, of what was left of, you'll see it back here, the Arch of St. Louis, what was left of St. Louis. Basically, when the ships instituted this re-terraforming of Earth, what they did is they created a second layer that overrode the bulk of the city, the original city. That's why they're on all this dirt. You're probably wondering, where are the buildings? These aren't the buildings. These are temporary structures that the aliens brought with them back here. If you can see my cursor. The only thing that stood were the top maybe 45, 50 feet of the arch. There's another 40, 50 feet below it. That's underground. Anyway, so it was fascinating the way they developed things. I think they could have gone a little bit stronger with getting into the alien politics, and they did. And at the same time, they didn't. But that's that's just a story note more than anything. So we have the largest representation by far as I know, of the Nordics are the Castathans from Defiance. Let's move on to our favorite guys, the Reptilians. Reptilians have been in our lore for a very long time, both in fiction and in reality. You might recall the 1929 exploration of the sewers of Los Angeles, the Los Angeles tunnel system. because people were seeing reptilianoids down there, humanoid reptilians down there. Interestingly, the humanoid reptilians did not show up in Defiance. At least not to my knowledge. These less bumpy Klingon types over here that this girl kind of represented, maybe there was a reptilian source I wasn't aware of it, or it just doesn't click in my memory. My research did not, fully didn't include reptilians. So getting back to reptilians. So 1929 tunnel system reptilians. The reptilians have been seen throughout the LA basin, really, mostly throughout our history there. And I think even the Native Americans speak of the reptilians in that area, which is fascinating. And it kind of makes sense because it's a desert, basically. We built a city on top of a desert. It's freaking insane. And lizards, at least our lizards here on Earth, tend to like the heat. And so I think to do the reptilian type aliens. Now, where have we seen the reptilian type aliens before represented in history? Let's go to Star Trek, my favorite thing in the whole world. I'm getting all these ads in the chat, which is horrible, and I can't get rid of them, which is just, I am upset with StreamYard for doing that. But I digress. Yes. Anyway, I can't get rid of them, unfortunately, which is a shame. But anyway, moving on. Star Trek Arena featured this creature here known as the Gorn, and we have seen updates of the Gorn since, especially in Strange New Worlds, although they don't show them very completely. And I find it interesting that this guy here, when you saw him in full body, and unfortunately I don't have that, he didn't have a tail. In Star Trek Strange New Worlds, they did have tails, all of them. And they were way more weird and aggressive. They kind of retconned what they did a little bit. And they kind of made them like those wasps that lay eggs in like spiders and stuff like that. So they'll sting you and they'll lay eggs in you, and then they'll sting you, leave you alone. Lay eggs in the spider. The spider's pretty much hunky-dory until the eggs start to grow, and then they hatch and they take over the body and they kill the host. And there's their first food source. Dork stuff. Well, that's kind of what the later Gorn did. Prior to that, they were just kind of reptilian. And I found something kind of interesting. They're on a desert planet here in this particular case. They're out near the Vasquez Rocks. This is the famous scene where Kirk climbs up the Vasquez Rocks. And the lizard, they're in the heat. And I get it. You're in a big rubber suit. You can't move that well because you're really just a human underneath all this rubber. So when he fights, it's really slow. And he's slow and clumsy, but he's super strong. Like he can lift a boulder over his head like nothing doing, like no one's business. Excuse me. So, this is one of our first looks at a reptilian. Let's see what else we got. And again, is this telling us without telling us? For my money, yes. But it's not the only representation. In fact, the representations kind of vary. So we have the sparkly-eyed guy here. And maybe that's a form of cover. We can actually look to the alien autopsy video, which we're going to look at this. So fair warning, might get a little gross later. So that could be an eye cover that they pop in, kind of like a over the eye contact lens kind of a deal. Who knows? And then we have these guys, the Slee Stack from Land of the Lost. something of a cross between an insect and a reptile. These guys, or Kermit the Frog. I mean, look at the frills on that. That's kind of weird. Kind of looks like Kermit the Frog frills to me. Maybe that was an inspiration. I couldn't tell you about that. But these particular guys also, interestingly, were super freaking slow. They were in a really heated environment. They like being near volcanic activity where it was really warm. This is all taking place underground, and they all went constantly. At least the Gorn had a language. You know, just a voice actor playing him gave him a little bit of I don't know, agency, a little more agency. And then they even later on in the Star Trek episode here, they had translators that could talk to each other in English, and they did a really good job because they had underneath the English was this kind of hissing voice that really like S's a lot. And they talk kind of draconian like this. So I thought that was kind of fun. But underneath it was, just kind of mumbling Tasmanian devil kind of stuff. So that was kind of fun. And for those of you who are just listening to us, I went back to the slide of the Gorn. Okay, let's look at the sleeve stack again with the single horn. Also, slow moving in heat, which makes zero sense. Although I get it, they were in rubber suits, man. That was, just whew. I did one day as a character at a theme park. Never, ever, ever again. It triggered a form of claustrophobia I don't want to even talk about. Anyway, I digress. So the sleeve stack was interesting, but not really. It was just a kind of basic bad guy. And so was the Gorn for that matter. Although the Gorn was I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to Star Trek real quick. So the Gorn in the arena anyway, it's the first and last time we ever see them in the original series. And that's what this image is from. But the Gorn said, well, listen, you're on our breeding planet. You just set up a shop there. You killed most of our hatchlings that hadn't hatched yet. And this is all unbeknownst to the Federation. So the Federation sets up this outpost. So they start bombarding the outpost. And they kill just about everybody. They even fake a message to the Enterprise when they show up to get them down there so they can kill all the humans there too. But it was a defensive action, we later learn. They were just protecting what was left of their young. I found that very interesting. And I imagine there's probably some truth to it when it comes to mining and digging and all that fun stuff around for us. So especially if they do live underground, like our reports, including the 1929 LA Times or whatever it was called, reporting on these creatures. Anyway, so sleeve stack, just a basic bad guy, just some of the give our heroes a problem. And then we come to V, which I found it was super intriguing, especially back then, because especially when they had all these beautiful actresses playing all these reptilians. And mind you, we didn't know they were reptilians initially. So when the visitors, that's what V stood for, visitors, show up, they are kind of like the guys from what's that called? That show where I'm drawing the blank. It's like Alien Habitat, Alien Mind, Alien something. Alien. Oh, that's bugging me so bad. Anyway, um, they show up in the ship. They're refugees, and they have a you know their planet is dead. That's their excuse anyway. So they came here to make contact, and they're more advanced. They have the huge ships that are they got fashion light tech, laser technology, blaster technology, that type of thing. So they're super advanced, but they come here, initially humbly and say, "Can we please join your society because we can bring a lot of benefit to you globally, help you with your food and all that fun stuff." But they come to us looking like people. So if you cover up half her face, I wonder if I could do that here. If we, let's see here. I'll do this. So if you cover up half her face like that, they looked human. They totally looked human. And then because this is rebellion that says, "Oh, it's too good to be true," and suddenly, all these visitors are getting the best of everything. It's like even the elites are kind of ticked off. They're getting kicked to the curb as they do their thing. So they're kind of making waves, and the governments are going out of the way to kind of appease them because they have all this advanced technology and they really want to make friends and they really want to get their hands on that tech. And it's kind of a slow process. The visitors, and I don't think we ever get their actual names, or maybe we do and I just don't remember. Eventually, it's revealed that they are really reptilian, and that this human guise. Let's see. Nope. Human guise is undo delete. Okay, there we go. This human guise is just that. It's a guise, and no one knows why they didn't come forward with this. And they have this really lame excuse, and it's kind of on point, but not really. In that was that we noticed that you tend to be afraid of anything that's not like you, so we put on this disguise. Okay, I'm going to pause that thought right there, and here's why. This also speaks, and this is more telling us without telling us. Speaks to the fact, and I say fact kind of loosely because I don't have proof. It's not like we have these things, on tape somewhere that for the world to see. But apparently the reptilians have the ability, and whether it's a prosthetic like they showed here, or it's a matter of actually doing some chameleonic kind of work. I mean, the reptilian, if they might have a chameleon type vibe to them too, where they can change their hue and even their eye shape to be more human. I mean, this was apparently a contact over this eye. Very fascinating stuff. But other than that, the physiology is almost identical. They got the eyelids like we do, and the nose and the mouth and the whole thing. It was just a prosthetic they put on. Kind of like those more advanced. You've seen those really advanced silicon-based masks that people put on. We've seen the demonstrations, and they're like what are they called? I think they're called busts, rubber busts, and the line of the thing goes under the shirt and everything, so you can make the neck and the head and everything else look exactly like whoever it is you're wearing. Size of one's head notwithstanding. And it would be indistinguishable from the real thing. Well, she gets hit by someone. I think someone acts out in public, and her entire face, side of her face, gets swiped away, and we get this in the show. This was a limited series. This is 84, which I think was a superior one. I mean, effects notwithstanding, this was pretty cool. Um, so it still speaks to the reptilian ability, whether prosthetic or natural or even hypnotic, to change their appearance. And we've heard that report a lot. So I think maybe they're telling us without telling us with regard to that. Now, we haven't seen a reptile. This is 1984. This is 1974. This is 1967. I went backwards for those of you just listening. So if you're looking at these different types, we've had 84. I think that's the last reptilian we have on screen, with one or two exceptions here and there. I think Star Wars had a reptilian guy for a while. Star Trek does once in a great while, but like the dinosaurs from Voyager. But other than that, not really. And if they do have, Doctor Who had the reptilians who were dormant here for a while, but they're from Earth, but they're super advanced because they had 65 million years to get to a level that was, like us, like in this, creating civilizations and what have you. But anyway, the reptilian really hasn't shown up consistently as a character since about this era. And they rebooted V a while back just to kind of refresh the idea, but the story was stale. They didn't really change that much. The actors changed. That's about it. Let's talk about the next people. Some say people. But the next, I'll say people on our list because apparently they have a civilization and they're very advanced, called the insectoids. Now, mind you, these guys are all based on our lineup here is all based on the more recent David Grush statement in New Mexico. I think they're near Dulce, near Dreamland, actually, when they held this event to release it all. They don't none of this drip drop stuff when it comes to the tranches of various UFO information that they're letting go. Let it all go. So, and this is what he said: Nordics, Greys, Insectoids, Reptilians, and Plasmoids. So this is what we're following. Let me get back up to our insect guy here. So these mantis-like creatures, we also heard tell from the Hopi of ant-like people. I could see them making I could see the case being made that you can confuse ant people with mantis people since they don't have a lot of mantises out near where the Hopi live. At least I don't think so. So they kind of do resemble ants with the long antenna and all that stuff, and the mandibles and yada, yada, yada. So where did we see these guys in the pantheon of human storytelling? Well, okay. In more recent history, we saw this guy show up on a doorbell cam. Kind of creepy looking. He's got a nose and he's got teeth and big eyes. Everyone thinks, it's a chihuahua that got mutilated or something like that. Yeah, maybe. But I maintain that they look a little more like the Xanthe Misfits from the Outer Limits. And another insectoid race. And you can see the similarities. That's freaking insane because look at that. You got eyes, kind of buggy eyes, the nose, the singular mouth. But other than that, it's an insect, right? So, yeah. Let me do that. And I even got a comparison for you. So look at that. Hey, Sherry's in the chat. I'm doing well, Sherry. Thank you. So for me, the insectoids, this is not a mantis, P.S. This guy over here, not a mantis. Then this little Xanthe Misfit guy is from the Outer Limits or Twilight Zone? No, I think it's Twilight Zone, actually. Or is it Outer Limits? Anyway, the Xanthe Misfits. These are chiefly the guys that show up in our story pantheon as far as fiction goes. Okay, here's our grays. We got tons of stuff on these guys. Let me go back to our insectoid friends here. So I find that super fascinating. Probably because we can't necessarily have too much exposed. And insects are hard to do and hard to train and yada, yada, yada. So I think largely it's a production thing. I mean, let me give you an example. When did it start? Doctor Who. It was the first Doctor. And I wish I had a picture of that because I just now thought to talk about it. But they went to the world of the ant people. And basically it was a bunch of dancers in these large ant, very funny looking ant carapaces, right? So they wore them like backpacks, so you can see the straps and everything. And the dancers wore all black, but you can still see their hands and feet. And they crawled around like ants. Except for, I think, the queen, who was upright, and her face shone through the carapace as a humanoid face. Kind of like the Xanthi Misfits, but it's a person. It's a person with a little mask around and the ant head over here. It was poorly done. So that could have been it. They just could pull off an insect-like creature. Even in CG, it'd be difficult to do. We've seen a few CG arachnoid type people, things rather. No, we never got into spider people except for yet another Doctor Who episode. But basically, she didn't move. Not even CG. The actor just kind of reared up. Like, she was like half laying down, then she kind of reared up. She had like her eyes, and then she had bug eyes, arachnoid eyes everywhere else. It was really inconsistent. I was like, okay. So insects must be really, really hard to do in Hollywood. Again, here's the comparison between the apparently real alien bug type person, although the body of this thing just falls apart because it looks like a paper bag or something beneath that, like someone's trying to hide the puppeteering hand. And then our Xanthi Misfits, which were claymation animated, which I found super fascinating. Let's move on to the folks we all know, the Greys, and I like this picture of the Grey because we get to see his uniform right there, which I found kind of cool. That's the color of his uniform right there. If you can see my, let's see, right about there. So let's talk about the Greys a little bit. Now, I think we talked about Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and we see here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit, that these guys they relied on the backlight to really kind of blind the flare of the lens so we could hide these details because these eyes did not blink. They were giant googly eyes, basically. I can move around and watch, these masks were not fantastic, but I'll give them credit because they gave them uniforms, just like we saw on the other guy, but the heads were nowhere near, and this eye right here kind of speaks to. Off in the corner here, if you can see my my cursor. Yeah. But I digress. It wasn't bad. I mean, for what it was for 1977, that was pretty good. And these are a bunch of children in alien outfits running around, and they got super long fingers and all that fun stuff. It was really well done for what it was. Then was it before or after these guys show up? I think just before. This huge spidery looking fella that looks kind of like them, but he's gigantic. It's like a daddy long legs with 4 legs. And he kind of crawls out the ramp, and he stands up and he goes like this in a welcoming gesture, and there's wonderful music and that seems to communicate A friendly air. I'm sorry, I'm chewing. I'm very hungry. I'm diabetic, and I gotta maintain stuff. I'll pause for a bit, but it's it's really creepy, and I couldn't get a good shot of it. Otherwise, I would have used it. But then when he comes out, there's a massive, and I think Spielberg's gone on record as going, this is just insane. We just couldn't pull it off. So we had to make him stubby all of a sudden. He just kind of whoop changed. And he looked like this. Kind of has the long thing going, but if you saw the full the creepy long limbs going. But if you see the long shot of him, he's got stubby little legs. Whereas before he had his big, long legs, gangly legs, kind of like his arms here. And so he comes out, he does the hand signal thing with that Jacques Valance like character. And that's what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be Jacques Valance. But he does the hand signal and right? And he repeats it, and then he goes back in the ship, and that's when all these guys come out. And oh no, check that. That's when all the people who have ever been taken since 1950s, whatever it was, and before, up till the current day, including the little boy in the movie, whose mother was played by, and it escapes me. Anyway, after release, the people, and some of these people are like from the 50s, and here it is 1977, so they're 25 years older, but because I guess they were traveling at light speed, Earth just kept on spinning, but these guys made this huge loop to come back and dropped off pilots from the from Flight 17 or Flight 19. And they hadn't aged a day, really. So there we have that. So the Greys have had a lot of representation. And including this guy here. The next part, okay, fair warning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to give you all fair warning right now. We're going to show a bit of the alien autopsy. It's a still, but it's kind of graphic. We see an eye part being peeled off, but it's significant, and I'll tell you why. Here we go. So, okay, I guess I skipped that part. But once the black part was peeled off in the alien autopsy, now I'm not giving the alien autopsy legitimacy exactly. I'm still 50-50 on it, to be completely honest, because the level of special effects available on the stock that the film available at the time the stock of the film was available, not only to the government, but to the public, would have been next to impossible. We didn't have even half this cinematic technology to simulate organs and the like and all that fun stuff. Until the late 70s, 80s, when all the gore films were really becoming popular, Freddy and all that stuff. And even then, we couldn't even begin to approximate the layers required in this if this was a dummy. I mean, special effects experts I respect. I don't know them necessarily, but I respect their work, and I've seen their work is insane. But then could be fake. Maybe military just went, hey, I got a great idea. But then why hide it for so long? And the fact that the film stock was from the 50s and it was rarely out there. It wasn't out there that long either. But anyway, I digress. Let's get to the fact of this particular photo. You will notice, and I will zoom in, that the black coverings, from this guy, those black coverings, they're coverings. They're like sunglasses, but they're more like overkill, full throttle skull. I can't pronounce it now. Those oversized contacts, basically, that they use to make eyes black in humans for purposes of theater or costuming or what have you. But I digress. Let's. It's not working. There we go. Okay, so I zoom in here, and I want you to notice that is the eyeball of this creature. Okay, that's the eyeball of this creature. Its eyes are kind of rolled up, and after removing the black sclera. Aha! I remember the word, the sclera, which was more like kind of membrane-ish, and they were kind of floppy when they pulled them out. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be gross, but they were more like a membrane. So it had basically, and I think they said it may have even been part of a extra eyelid, but I think they said it was artificial in the thing. So there were 3 eyelids basically, the blinky ones, upper and lower, and then this second one, which was the black sclera, and then underneath that was the normal eye. But you can see how big those eyes are. And the next slide, you will see a comparison here with, again, the black sclera moved, these eyes rolled up, how big they were, and how big they were here. Are they telling us without telling us? I think maybe they are. And the grays are the biggest example in the world, and for whatever reason, the scariest. Mostly because we have them to blame for the alien abduction phenomenon. Although people have seen all these guys from the lineup so far. The Nordics, the insectoids, the grays, and the reptilians. So, again, I think there's a telling us without telling us thing happening. I'm not I don't know what I was going to say there, but I mean, I'm expert enough as a filmmaker to know what's required to make this autopsy in the 50s or 60s or whenever it was happen was not available to us. We just did not have them. If we did, it wasn't being shared with Hollywood. This was so on. If it was faked, it was such a custom job. Whoever put it together in the 50s or 60s, I think we said 50s. I think it was 50s because the film stock was from 57, if I remember. Was a genius. 30, 40 years ahead of the game when it came to Hollywood of special effects. So take that with a grain of salt. But I want you to see they didn't use the sclera here. They just used the giant eyeballs, which kind of matches this right here. So telling us without telling us, I think maybe so, although I cannot confirm that. Okay, up next is insect something. I don't know why that's there. We get rid. It says insect for some reason. I don't know why, but ignore that. I want to talk about the plasmoids, and then we'll talk about some other stuff in a little bit. Now, we don't see a lot of the plasmoids. Not really. Not when it comes to film and theater, although we do. And I have a couple examples to share with you about that. Actually, I tell you what, we'll get into plasmoids in a little bit. We're going to take an early break, and we will see you in just a little bit after these wonderful announcements. See you in a few. This is the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 in the Gulf Coast. UPRN talkradio.com. Esoteric programming at its finest.
Long ago in the ancient world, the Tribus Omnis Lux, later known as the Tridents, were celebrated heroes, defenders of humanity against unspeakable monsters. Today, they continue that sacred duty in secret, hunting the dark evils that lurk just beyond the shadows. They are the Trident of Light,
Introducing Story TV, enabling true creative freedom for independent creators. Search an ever-growing library of fantastic festival winners, including Blaney Tucker's Ghost and the Monster Hunters of the TOL. Free to enjoy at lower resolutions. Pay $5 per month for 1080 and full K presentations to support the artists you enjoy. Your monthly contribution actually goes to the filmmakers themselves. Support independent film. Support Story TV. Check out our Patreon. Get deeper behind-the-scenes insights. Also, tips into being a better paranormal investigator and other fascinating content. Follow us on Instagram at paranormal.insight. Stay informed on upcoming shows, see what paranormal trends we're following, and help us reach 50,000 followers by liking, following, and sharing. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube at paranormal_insight. Click the Live tab to see our latest videos. I'm muted. I'm sorry. Welcome back to the show. It's me, Tim, your favorite paranormal investigator. Sorry, finishing up a piece of food here. And we're back. We're going to talk more about Are They Telling Us Without Telling Us, the Hollywood conspiracy, and yada, yada, yada. Yep. I got that note. Thank you, Heidi. For audio was blank there for a sec. My apologies for that. Also, if you do hear a whining in the background, thanks, Heidi. I got a fan going because it's really hot here. So my apologies for the noise contamination. But let's get back to our look. And we're at the fifth character in our lineup, which is, hold on, let me see if we can go back there real quick. Okay. We're in the fifth character of our lineup, known as the Plasmoid. Now, the Plasmoid is kind of interesting. This is a creature with intelligence. I should say entity more than anything. An entity with intelligence, but without physical form. They're pure thought, pure energy, as Mr. Spock likes to say a lot. And we haven't seen a lot of examples of these creatures in the pantheon of the human experience as far as storytelling goes. Although we have heard a lot of things regarding orbs. I wasn't a believer in orbs when I was first starting out in the paranormal investigation biz. Not at all. I thought it was dust, and people were just throwing a lot of personal things. Oh, and see how the dust ball moved left to right and hovered by me as if it were my long-lost grandmother or something like that. And it sounded ridiculous until I had my own first experience with an orb that I did not see, that was not visible on camera, live, but it went on this investigation. We were doing an EVP session, and this thing flew in, went through my back, came out my stomach, and then went through my forearm and out the other side. We watched it happen. You see me responding with an edge at one point, and it was just a freaky thing to want to see on playback. It really was. So orbs with regard to hauntings, and even orbs with regard to space phenomena, we've seen that reported by astronauts. Strange orbs were following the ship. Strange orbs were around me in space. Heidi has something to share. I found my own experience. Move intentionally or respond to questions or trigger items. Move. Some I found in my own experience. Some intentionally or Some move intentionally. I can't talk. She sent a little correction. So some move and others are used to trigger items. That could, yeah, for sure. I mean, my own experience kind of bears that out. Although it didn't really respond to anything we were saying, except actually, I take that back. It did, because in the EVP session I was talking about, I say, give us a sign that you're here, and then don't worry about the spelling, Heidi. That's a-okay. I'm a writer and I mess up all the time. So spell check is my best friend. But I think we asked for a sign, give us some proof that you're here, is what we said. And then I got that proof that I couldn't see with my own eyes, so we thought it was a bust. But I digress. So plasmoids and or orb type entities that are the epitome of pure energy, concentrated thought. And a lot of people think this is what the soul is, living in our heads right now. And we have a few photos that depict and or show the soul as a faint little wisp of, energy leaving the body of people who have passed. There's one I think it's a piece of video. They're at a hospital helideck, and the helicopter lands, and you see this weird wisp just kind of sneak up into the air. And approximately that time, the person was brought into the hospital, perished. And then there was a documentary on spiritualism, and they're following a monk who has decided to die in a very traditional way. And he gets down to this emaciated little skull guy, but he's still conscious to a degree. Skeletal. Sorry, he was on a skull guy, but he's this little tiny thing. And they can carry him. He's so light. It's like maybe 5 or 10 pounds, or maybe 15, 20. I don't know. But he's this little thing now. But his mouth is still going. And he's able to open an eye once in a while and say, yeah. And he's talking very, very softly. And finally, they give him a chant, and they walk him through a meditation. And we're not allowed to see that, but, they film from the outside. And at one point, you see the same exact things at the helipad. You see this sneaking little wisp. And just after that, one of the monks steps out and announces the monk's passing. But it was fascinating. I mean, that's 2 examples caught on film that verify that the soul is an energy source. And, right now running through my brain and yours, those of you watching and listening, we have a series of electrical impulses running back and forth throughout our brains, and it is cogent, it's coherent. What makes up us. And when the energy stops, we are a bag of rocks, basically. So there's something to be said for what plasmoids are. Their consciousness as energy, as we are here, but without physical form. More of a bright, luminous, energetic form versus this hard material, or as Yoda said, this crude material. Anyway, I love Yoda. Heidi has an orb story. I also felt and then saw an orb go through my side from our security cameras. Oh, well, that's cool. That's pretty cool. Let me turn off this banner here real quick, because you don't need to see that anymore. Or maybe you do. I don't know. But let's move on to what has been represented in the form of these plasmoids in our stories. Whoops. Okay. This is a later example. This is from Star Trek Prodigy. And the creature you see here is called the Medusan. And for those of you who are Star Trek fans, that's going to sound super familiar. for good reason. In the original series, a Medusan was this entity, energy, very much like they show here. Here. That's what that ball of energy is in the window of this construct she's walking around in. Zero's a female. There's a female overtone to her anyway, voice. And, excuse me. But in this casket looking thing that it opens and then it closes, and that's where the Medusan lies. Now, in the original series, they said something interesting, which I think maybe had to be, as far as the effects go and the practicality of the application and the fact that we were dealing with 60s television, couldn't really be pulled off. And that is that the Medusans were said to be so ugly and because they're without form that they were hard. It was hard for anyone to process who they were and what they looked like. They later became just balls of energy, like you see here represented here. So the Medusan was retconned a little bit, but because it was a formless, basically humanoid that was sitting in this box, so no bones, basically, just slabs of skin, maybe an eyeball poking out here. I think that's what they were going for initially. Boneless people. Holy crap. Oh man, can you imagine that? Boneless people on television. We've seen it in cartoons maybe a couple of times, but I think maybe, I don't know about muscle tissue either. If no bones, no muscle tissue, really. So maybe just organs, if that. I don't know. They didn't really go into detail. They said they were formless. And they were too ugly for most creatures to face, except for Vulcans, who were trained in disassociating themselves from their emotions. And Mr. Spock was. And he was actually able to quasi-mind meld, like, kind of joined minds, really, in Spock's body in order to solve a navigational issue that cropped up, which is kind of cool. But still, it was the fact that they kind of retconned it to make them energy people. The funny thing is, in the effects of the original series, they actually showed flashes of energy. Yeah, don't watch that for epileptic PS. But flashes of energy as they looked at this thing. It's like, that's not ugly. It's weird, but it's not ugly, per se. And looking at this was a dancing light display in her little optical window there too, in this robot form she cobbled together. Which says there is a physicality to them, but it might be selective. Like, I don't know. Maybe once a while you can give your energetic form enough mass to actually manipulate things. Who knows? Or inhabit a computer, maybe, to build you something. I digress. I don't really know. I'm just kind of putting pieces together here. But nonetheless, the Medusan was one of the first things. And then more recently, this is like, 22 something, 22, 23 of this century. So not too long ago. And kudos, retcon. Prodigy was fantastic. I know it was meant for kids, but it was really wonderful. It really was very well written, very much in a fantastic piece of the canon. We got to see Janeway as an admiral later on in her life, and Chakotay, and a lot of the Voyager crew came back. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. They voiced their characters. That was pretty cool. So, and then we see these guys. What, Tim? That's not a plasmoid. Well, if you watch Babylon 5, you knew about the Vorlon. You knew that these armored things that they were wearing were called encounter suits. Very much like our Medusan friend here. They were balls of energy operating a mechanical suit. Okay. and too brilliant to look at. They looked like suns, basically small suns. That was also, and I forgot to include it, but there was also an energy-like creature who could shift between an energy, a small sun, quite literally, and a humanoid presence. And her name escapes me, but it was on the show Andromeda. If any of my people out there in chat world know what I'm talking about, jump on. I'll put it back up for you. Jump in here, find this stream, and jump into the chat and tell me what that character was called. She was purple at one point, and then she was like sunburst orange in her skin coloring. And fantastic actress. I saw her in something else later on. She was great. Set in the 50s or 60s. It was really well done. But anyway, so this is another version of an energy creature, a plasmoid, inhabiting a mechanical suit in order to interact with us, so as not to harm us, more or less. I found that super fascinating. And then okay, ships. I'll get to ships in a second. But going back to our plasmoid idea, what do we have? We have orbs. Yeah. And we've seen orbs with faces of them. That could be not onomatopoeia. That's something else. Pareidolia. That could be pareidolia on our parts. I've experienced pareidolia as far as my clients seen. I know there's like demonic faces in there. I said, well, and I did an experiment. And I did the exact same, put myself in the exact same physical conditions, a dark room with just one light, very staticky background. It's like, I guarantee you pause at any point in this, and I waited for 10 seconds, you will see a face or faces, multiple faces. You might even see faces moving around. Pareidolia. Now, if a face stayed regular and started talking to me or something, then I could see where they had point, but we were never able to make that happen. Pareidolia. Anyway, so Medusa, Vorlon. If I'm skipping into in the character from Andromeda, Gemini was the character's name, but I don't remember the actress's name. Oops. I've experienced pareidolia my entire life. Yeah, you're a hoot. I love you. That's what she said. I've experienced pareidolia my entire life. It happens, man. Well, that's how we're built as humans. We're built to see faces, even in camouflage. It's a survival instinct, and that just kind of shows you that we haven't evolved beyond such instincts, which I'm kind of glad for, to be honest. But for example, the plasmoid creature doesn't have such instincts anymore. They're plasma. Nothing can really hurt them, per se. Unless they get degaussed. That could be painful, I imagine. That's just a guess, though. Okay. So let's move on to another piece of the conspiracy connection in Hollywood. And that is the flying saucer and or starships in general. Again, AI generated image you're looking at here. I told it to find the most common flying saucers and show me a picture of them all around Earth's orbit. Did a pretty good job. And here's a chart from the 60s, 50s, maybe the 70s of reported starships. And if we compare this to this, I got a lot of them pretty close. I mean, I'm actually impressed with AI's ability to grab this image and do a pretty good job with putting together the usual suspects. But this is what actual people have visualized and seen for themselves as far as craft go. And there's variations on the theme. There's the hat type fellas here, up here, especially the sombrero. That was kind of neat. And you'll notice they're from Ontario to France to Gloucestershire to Norway, Trent, USA, Brazil. I mean, they're all over the place. So that one's pretty cool, actually. But a lot of hat ones, a lot of kind of, I don't know what you would call that. It's almost like a pie tin. But there's a real pie tin right there. Classic saucer, two things put together. Hawke's Bay, New Zealand. They're from all over the world. Sao Paulo, Brazil was this big one. Santa Ana, California. I think I remember that report. From somewhere. This is from 1965, and then there's this thing, which from underneath had these whipping antennas all around, which is kind of cool and kind of weird at the same time. You think an advanced species wouldn't have that type of thing, but I don't know. Maybe they have use for it. And then there's this guy. Pardon me. Which reminds me of the 1951, what are those called? Boomerang-shaped things flying over Mount Rainier in 51. And then there's, this guy, and then Henley Staffs. Anyway. But then I want you to also take a look at what's next. That's not it. I went the wrong direction. Ta-da! This is from The Twilight Zone, 1962. And this is not too far off from what we've seen depicted before. If you're going to use something that people have actually seen. It'll add that much more fear because this thing was all over the newspapers back then. They didn't have the internet for the public. But this is from a episode called Invaders. They colorized this, which was a mistake in my personal estimation, but it wasn't bad. But this flying saucer here, you'll notice this is the size too. This is legit. So they built this saucer, and then this woman walks into her attic, and we see the saucer. And she looks underneath it, and it kind of looks like, I'll go back here, this guy. I'll zoom in. This guy kind of looks like this guy. Not with the rivets here, but basically it has that underneath part right here, almost identical. And hold on, let me get back to this. So she looks underneath, and I think I talked about this last week too, but she's being attacked by these little astronauts. They're basically wind-up toys. You know those wind-up toys? They walk like too funny. Well, they've described the little wind-up stem as having a radar scan, a little radar system on top of it. I wish I could show you a better picture, but I couldn't find any online that were worthwhile. It was really funny, though. It was really funny. I found it hilarious. Because they even cut off, the little spokes it had for balance when they walk. They cut off the little spokes. And so it walked, and it was a little unstable. But they built a stop, so it would go like that, and it would fire off this little pew, 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 little laser gun. And she'd get these little welts when she did this on her arm. And it was really fantastic. And finally, she gets ticked off, grabs a rock or something. She's tired of being attacked by these little guys, goes up to where the ship is, and slams the thing left and right and center with this huge rock. She's just hitting it and hitting it and hitting it. She's essentially a middle-aged woman. And then we get the other side of this very saucer, and it says United States Air Force with a little flag on it. I think there's a saucer number 2, like saucer number 1 or something like that. And you hear this distress call. We're being attacked. We're being attacked. Don't come to the planet. Don't come to the planet. And that was it. And it cuts off. And it turns out they landed on a planet full of giants. It was great. It was a fantastic. So if you have an I know I gave a lot away. I'm sorry about that. but it's worth a watch. Even if you know what's coming, it's a great, great series. But I want you to take a look at what we did. And I say we. I don't know we can collectively claim this per se, but if you share something with everyone, it in effect becomes partly ours as an identifier. It's like, oh, we made these films, we made these television shows, we told these stories. Because if you look at this from a macro perspective, I'm sorry, not macro, from an outside perspective, and you're looking at Earth as a whole, it doesn't matter that Rod Serling wrote this. This is part of Earth's story, their stories. You see? So if you get that galaxy brain going, you can look down on Earth and say, oh, look what they created. Look at the story they told. They're not going to identify Rod Serling specifically. They might at one point or another, but I mean, realistically, it kind of belongs to us, collectively speaking. Again, from the galaxy brain, from the galaxy eyes view type of thing. Or I'm sorry, you know what I'm saying? If you look at Earth as a whole. Anyway, so we claimed the saucer as our own. We had so many sightings of it. It's like, let's throw it in. Let's make it our own. Now, are they telling us without telling us that was actually the case? Because it has been put forward umpteen times, including in the Rendlesham Forest case in the 80s, that certain craft, at least to one degree or another, are actually hours from the future, trying to make sure things go correctly in the timeline. Okay, so are they telling us without telling us? This is 1962. They must be telling us without telling us one thing or another, because these were Earthers on that flying saucer. Earthers, humans, into little robotic spacesuits, but nonetheless, those are representative of us. And look what we did. We shot first and asked questions later, and we got our butts handed to us and got our ship crippled by a giant who is comparatively, well, if that's a 15-foot tall ship in scale, she was easily 3 or 4 times that tall. Closer to 3 times that tall. And in reality, the actress is 5'7", so do your math. Or 5 foot. She was 5'4", excuse me. And the actress's name completely escapes me, but that specific tidbit stayed in my brain for some reason. But there we have it. We claimed the flying saucer as our own. And we did it again in the 1950s and 60s when we had Lost in Space. This is the Jupiter 2. The spaceship for the Space Family Robinson, which is awesome, by the way. Who didn't love this? They made this the launch vehicle in the remake of the film series remake, which was bull. I mean, I know you want to make things sleeker and faster and new and yada, 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 but there's nothing wrong with this ship. It's a little cornball looking, but you know what? Let's go back. It kind of resembles some of our vessels, like this one a little bit, like this one a little bit. Kind of resembles this one again a little bit. This one for sure. You know, we duplicated. Ladies and gentlemen, we duplicated what we saw in the newspapers, in the skies, in the reports that these people generated who actually witnessed these things. And we put them in our stories. Because we knew them. And we did something very interesting. We made them ours. These are Earth vessels. Again, are they telling us without telling us? I think maybe they are. I don't know about getting lost in space per se. That's probably entirely possible, but well, it is entirely possible, especially if anyway, your robot goes nuts and knocks out your navigational system. Anyway, I digress. So suffice it to say, I was a fan of that show too. But let's let's take a okay. Flying saucers. By the way, the Twilight Zone did not get rid of this flying saucer. They use this thing and a few others like it for numerous episodes. Most of them flown, if not all of them flown, by people, humans. We were flying these things around in the Twilight Zone universe. Same thing here, Lost in Space. Humans were flying these things around. We knew how to build and fly flying saucers. Practical. Are they practical? Yeah. They go virtually in any direction. Okay. They're not fighter jets in space, like the X-Wing, for example, which I have no problem with. Love Star Wars. Love the design ethic. Ethic? I like the designs. And even their non-conforming designs, like the TIE Fighter. It's a big H in space, but they made it work. They made it terrifying. And if you want to get really like insider and kind of somewhat conspiratorial in its own right, if you take Star Wars and you take the Millennium Falcon and you look at it from the top down, it's Spock hands, kids. It's live long and prosper. Okay, here's the bridge of the Falcon. Here's the split front. Millennium Falcon. Someone was a Star Trek fan in the Star Wars universe, and that's unconfirmed, I might add, but I have a strong suspicion that's the case. Let me get back to the slideshow here. So, saucers. We love saucers. We're making them our own. And then we say, you know what? We can make the saucers even more our own if we add a little something to it. And here we have the Tim Jeffries version of the Starship Enterprise from Star Trek. This is actually a fascinating little rendering here. You'll notice the photon torpedo base down here and the squared off nacelles and stuff like that. This is actually the ship that was drawn and painted in the motion picture, the first Star Trek movie, on the posters. This is what it was supposed to look like. But then they surprised us all and completely retrofitted the entire Enterprise to make it look like what we would later know, what we come to know as the 1701A. But this was the actual concept. It's called the Tim Jeffries concept. And it was put in the poster. It was supposed to look like this. I kind of wish it had. But I guess I was overruled on that. Like, somehow. As a fan, I would have liked to have seen it this way. I thought, if you're going to put it in the poster, put it on screen. That's all I'm saying. Although I have no problem at all with what they did with the Enterprise. I thought it was a great upgrade and so on and so forth. But the Tim Jeffries Enterprise is always fun. But look what they did. They took a saucer. They even call it the saucer section in the films and television shows. And they put it on top of other pieces. An engine room or an engineering section, and then the warp drive nacelles. So now they didn't have to power everything so internally. And it gave you places to go, different places to go on the ship without being confined to a single saucer. And lots of round corridors. You can play with it a little bit. But and which is cool, I think. They did a very good job in creating a new type of saucer, basically. And now they have half saucers and quarter saucers and the wedges even, like in the Odyssey class. Don't get me started on Star Trek, man. I can go on for hours and hours and hours, especially when it comes to spaceships. They're starships, rather. I love everything about it. I play Star Trek Online. Probably shouldn't have let that one out there, but I do daily. In fact, after we're done here, guess what I'm doing? But I digress. So I still find that fascinating. Are they telling us without telling us? With Star Trek, it's a little bit harder. They actually took an extra effort to give it more and make it Earth's really make it Earth's own, not some borrowed piece of technology from the newspapers. So I can appreciate that in general. That's just fantastic. Okay. Have we seen the saucers before? Yes. This is a very crappy rendition, a resolution of a cave painting. And whoever the artist is took it upon themselves to actually draw squares around the hat-looking saucers. That's from a cave painting. So we've had these things in our personal history, in our real history, since more or less the beginning of our civilizations. Even the ones that were living in caves, because they were civilizations. They were just primitive civilizations. And again, less primitive, but nonetheless ancient. This is the depiction of a vessel that wound up on shore with this individual who they determined looked more or less Japanese, carrying this rectangular device. They gave her, female mind you, proper clothes to wear around town, because apparently she came in something more akin to a spacesuit. They even, and I don't read Japanese, took notes on this. Like, this is graded, this is not, these were this, that, and the other thing. And you'll look here, and I'll zoom in on it. If you look here, here, maybe I can drop shape around it real quick. Let's see. Sorry. let me just say line and no fill. And let me turn that red. Okay. Good. And great. So we look here. I don't believe that's Japanese. Someone saw that writing on the craft. And for further evidence, I bring you up here, where they see all of this. Look at that. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you just listening, I urge you to go back and rewatch this episode. Again, you can go to youtube.com/@paranormal_. That's the little line, not the dash, but the line that goes low. Insight/streams, and you can find us there. You can find this episode there. It doesn't show up in regular videos. I don't know. YouTube's not doing their job or whatever. But these are alien glyphs that they actually saw on the craft itself, which is blowing my mind. Blowing my mind. And kudos to the Japanese documenting that. I mean, that's just amazing. Amazing stuff. Let me go back here a little bit. Fit to slide. Okay, I think I goofed and I moved that around a little bit. I'm not too sure how I did that, but I did. Okay. Can I move it? Nope. Okay, well, I'll say done, because apparently I did something wrong with regard to that slide. There we go. So, but I digress. Here we have, there we go. So they actually, I'm going to save that because that's pretty cool. They actually documented alien script on this craft that washed up. And she was there for like a week or something like that, if I remember the tale correctly. And then she took off. She was just gone. I don't know if it was in the middle of the night or not, but apparently the thing lit up and gone. She was gone in a blank. Fascinating stuff. But again, we have a saucer-like device from antiquity. Aliens apparently like this, probably for a very good reason. Apparently they're buoyant on top of everything else, which is kind of cool. And then we have the more abstract vessels. Now, I know what you're saying, Tim. I don't see a single UFO in here. I see a bunch of dots. Okay, granted, you do. This is I want to say Bulgarian or Austrian or something like that. A rendering based on a woodcut where back in something like maybe it's Bavarian even, something like 12th century or earlier even, we have a series of orbs and what look to be rods of some sort and orbs within rods and these cross-looking things that had orbs on the ends of them. It's just an amazing stuff. And then we got this thing that's behind the sun. These two twin arcs. Ladies and gentlemen, you really do have to see this again if you're just listening. The name of this piece escapes me, unfortunately. Perhaps I should endeavor to find out the name. But toward the bottom, they have the town. I think this might be Bavaria now, I think. They have the town. It's got two twin towers in front of its church. That could be a palace, but I don't think it is. And there's a town there. It's pretty, and it's so small in the lower left portion of this depiction. It might be lower right. I don't know if this image is reversed or not, but it took up 2 pages in whatever illustration this is. And, or at least it was folded at one point. And there's this huge black arrow-like looking thing. Almost looks like an oversized spear. Some might equate it to a Imperial Star Destroyer from Star Wars. But it's solid black with the exception of a couple white lines here and there. And still, if you go to the town and the fields and everything else in the background are left way at the bottom of this page. Again, I'm describing for those who don't have eyes on this right now. And there's a church off to the right. So I don't know what these tall pillars are over here on the left. But there's definitely a church, and beyond the church are a bunch of fields, and those fields are burning. Among the burning fields are a series of these orbs that were apparently shot down. But it is interesting to note that there are broken rods that appear to be broken pieces of wood. Those could be blaster bolts. That's just a guess. I don't see smoke coming off any of these things. The only smoke they depict is the fire in the field. So, and then there's these crosses flying around. Some have orbs on the end, others don't. But crosses, and I mean like plus sign crosses. It's fascinating. They're saying this was a battle that took place over this town, with a little bit of fallout happening to some of the fields. And there's these people on the ground dressed rather nicely. Yeah, given the dress, I'd say 13th century. Maybe earlier, maybe later. Around there, though. Because the dudes are wearing the frillies, and they even had... like the coat came down almost like a skirt. No, I think that was frilled too. And then they're wearing leggings and boots underneath that. People dress so weird back in the day. Anyway, but the town is so miniature compared to this battle scene. And wow. And the various circles and orbs that are up there could be explosions, although they don't look like explosions. They look like just orbs flying around. There's these tubes releasing these orbs too, so they could have been some sort of, what's that called? Like a mass launcher of some sort, or a launcher tube. There's one that's empty. There's a couple of them that are empty. But gosh, whatever was happening in the sky that day was full of weird stuff. And that kind of brings me to the fact that while we saw this in the past, in like 12th, 13th century, I don't know that this really falls into predictive stuff, but I know this image has been used as for instance, in various documentaries regarding UFOs and regarding alien intent on this planet. So, is this a potentiality? It's a potentiality. Yeah, they could start waging war in our skies again. You don't know. I mean, who does know? Here we go. This is the tall whites as described, and I put these guys at the end because they're never discussed, with the exception of me and Charles Hall. They're never discussed. And apparently they're interacting with our military on a daily basis, even to this day. So much so that they actually have a tourism board of sorts. This is according to Charles Hall, and then verified by me at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, where I saw virtually this pairing, parent and child, at the boardwalk. I've told you that story 1,000 times. I'm not going to bore you, but it is interesting to note that these guys are never brought up in fiction. The Nordics, yes. Are they supposed to be the Nordics? This is another question I have. Are they substituting the tall whites for the Nordics and vice versa? Because they look radically different. They have the grays type of almond-shaped eyes that are a little bit bigger than ours, but they have this tall humanoid look. If you were to put sunglasses on them, you'd never know they didn't look like us. The bridges of the nose might give them away a little bit, but and the pallor of their skin, they're white. They are not to be offensive, but very white, very albino in their presentation. That's not to say albinos are aliens. I'm just saying, because every creature on this planet has an albino version in one place or another. It just happens. Totally natural. These guys all look like that, apparently. So why that, I guess, is the follow-up question. Why aren't you representing these creatures? You give all the other creatures representation, even plasmoids who have to walk around in the countersuits, but not the tall whites, as they're called. Excuse me. Worth questioning, I think. And I don't know why you wouldn't give... I mean, that's a great story in and of itself, even if you're going to make a fiction out of it and make it something that's plausibly deniable so the public can consume it without, saying, I knew it. They can go, oh, yeah, you must have watched that TV series or that TV series. Because the Greys, I mean, like I said, the Greys are the superstars, man. They've been in Stargate. They've been in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and pretty much a Twilight Zone, later Twilight Zones, and pretty much everything in between. They were even on Supernatural, for crying out loud. And Supernatural doesn't have aliens. Except for that one thing where it was the trickster and he made this college jock get his just desserts because he was being a weenie. So he caused an abduction to happen, which was totally fabricated by the trickster himself. And the little gray alien had to dance with the jock, or vice versa, to Lady in Red. Lady in Red. I can't sing. Lady in Red, you're dancing with me. Anyway, it was pretty funny. If you good stuff. But that is about the first and only time they'd ever showed up. But again, it showed up, and they went with the gray alien. Come on. Here's a picture. I think I skipped something in the insect thing. I'll go back to it in a second. But here's an interesting picture. This is from 1977. This is the workshop, costuming workshop for the Star Wars, for what they now call Episode 4. But back then it was just New Hope. Beg your pardon. Excuse me. And these are the different headpieces for the various actors that wore the alien costumes, and they have everything. They got the blue-skinned, red-eyed, quasi, gray folk here. The flesh-colored, big-eyed, quasi-gray folk. This ghost face-looking guy here. I don't remember the dude with the black paneling here, but I remember the Cyclops guy, which is interesting. And then we have this triangle-headed guy here. And if you look real carefully, there's a big rat-looking thing. It was actually a bat. You see him go. He wants a drink from the bartender, and he does uppies in order to get it. And then over here in the corner is the goat guy. Again, if you want to know what I'm talking about, please go to youtube.com/@paranormal_insight/streams or hit the live tab, and you'll be able to take a look at this episode and even skip around and all that fun stuff to the things I'm talking about. But it's fascinating that we still went largely with the Greys type. We didn't even there's a Cyclops there. That's pretty cool. There's a goat man, which is pretty cool. You notice he has goat-like teeth. I think he even makes goat sounds and goes, meh. The giant batter rat. Are they telling us without telling us? Maybe. Okay, that's a spaceship thing. I think that ended up here on accident. But there's one thing I forgot to include in the insectoid thing. Oh, did it not make it? That's probably on me. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to add it in right this second because it kind of deserves to be there. And I'm going to tell you about another insectoid that made it to the big screen. Because I said, that's it. And then it's not true because there was another insectoid. It was, see if I can find you here. Let me look for it. I'm so sorry. I'm talking, of course, of the film District 9 and the giant insectoids, and they even had little baby versions of them. Creatures that land from that ship, right? So, District. There we go. Oh, it didn't show up. Is it under something else? Might be under something else. Sorry, I got to dig for this. I don't know why it didn't make it out here, but it didn't for whatever reason. Okay. That's embarrassing. That really is embarrassing. It could have ended up in a different folder too. But District 9 had these insect creatures. Those were the aliens, and they were encamped here on Earth because we didn't know what else to do with them. They showed up in South Africa because movies always depicted happening in New York or LA or something like that, but no. Or DC even. No. This time they wound up in South Africa. It was fantastic. Oh, man. That was good stuff. There we go. So let me get to the thing here. I'll show you a picture of I just saw it. There it is. There he is. The so-called prawn is what they called them. Although personally to me, they don't look a thing like a prawn, but whatever. The nickname or slur for them in the film was prawn. Personally, I don't see it. I see something closer to not a prawn. They don't look like a shrimp to me. But these were insectoid creatures that walked around, and I think they had special technology that only reacted to their DNA, which we've heard happening. That's a legitimate thing. But, I mean, cinematically speaking, it's these guys and the Xantes. And this guy's showing up on the doorbell cam. Two. in all of cinematic history. Again, I forgot about the prom. If there is another film out there that features the insectoid, okay, great. I missed it. It didn't cross my desk, so to speak. But maybe if you know about it, let me know. So, but again, I want you to look at how these things are constructed. It's more like, let me hold on. Okay, let me put it this way: they're either refugees or they're attacking us directly, as is the case with the Xanthi Misfits. Although with the Xanthi Misfits, all they did was really swarm you. The Xanthis themselves, according to a message they received, the government, because they gave them this fenced off ghost town to show up in, to occupy. They couldn't destroy themselves. And they were basically, these misfits, these were criminals under a death penalty. So they sent them to the harshest planet they had on record, where, the inhabitants will stomp anything that looks weird. And they sent their misfits and or criminals to us. And we succeeded. I think we blew up the town or did something to it at one point or another. With regard to the prawn in District 9, they were largely they had to adopt to us. I get that. From a human perspective, I get that. But families were broken up. Absurd rules were in place to keep them from establishing any sort of social center. They were quick to get into criminal activity because they gave them more freedom and control. And that included dealing in their tech, which only operated under their direct DNA exposure. And I don't mean spitting on the hand of a human and then being able to operate it. They just had to have the DNA in their system. And one guy, as you may know, if you know the story, happened to be exposed to such a degree to an alien device, or was it a spray? May have been some sort of spray that actually started to alter him and turn him into one of the prawn aliens. And he was able to operate their gear. Devastating weaponry, by the way, but they didn't have access to their ship anymore. They were basically boarded by helicopters and yeah. And everyone was kind of shipped off and dropped to the floor and, dropped to the ground, rather, put in tent cities, and that was it. But insectoid, nonetheless, they still had that. They didn't have a hive mind thing going, per se. They were individuals, very much so. But they were very clever, very quick to learn our language, even though they didn't speak it very well. Some of us humans were able to, develop their language too, at least understand it. And then those who could understand us were acted as translators between one another. So it was interesting. It was an interesting dynamic, and they did. I think it was the most realistic story out there, but at the same time, if these prawn characters were simple refugees and or prisoners aboard their vessel, where were the captors? They never got into that or what they looked like. And if they did it in such a subtle way. I think it was, oh, look, pan over to the prawn guy freaking out. Anyway. So I'm sorry I forgot that individual, that type of guy here. The guy. There he is. So prawn, and then we talked about the Greys, which have been explored extensively, the plasmoids, and the ships echoing the UFO thing, which I still find really fascinating. Jupiter 2, the Enterprise, to an extent. And they kind of, like I said, this is where the departure was. And then they departed completely. It was after Star Trek, going into Star Wars, actually. From that point forward, it was all things that really look kind of similar to what we already have. The X-Wing fighters, the TIE fighters. I mean, that's a concept piece, but the big triangles for the Star Destroyers, and then the Death Star itself, which was basically a giant planet, planetoid or what have you. Stuff from the past. And then these guys who were never touched on in cinema whatsoever. And okay, you want to go back to something else which I forgot to include in the Greys? X-Files had Greys left, right, and center. These little guys mostly. Yeah, man. X-Files had that all over the place. They just couldn't leave well enough alone. Okay, back to the Star Wars guys. They basically were the first ones to give us a cornucopia of aliens in one space that weren't just, Spock-eared fellows, although that did happen on occasion. But, or elf ear, if you prefer. Excuse me. But yeah, and then there's the ships again. Space Warden, the Solar Warden Space Fleet is a whole different podcast, but I find it fascinating that we as our creative side, those who develop and put these things out, are they under the influence of the intelligence agencies, the government itself, various governments across the world, an elite cabal? I mean, we've heard that they need to say something. They cannot lie to us, so they lie to us without lying to us. They tell us without telling us, basically. And these individual things, I mean, that could be a live creature that someone caught in the door cam. It just happens to look like a Xanthi misfit. And maybe that was telling us without telling us, too. I mean, there's a differentiation. This thing's about the size of a dog here with the bug eyes and on the ring cam. And this thing's the size of a, I don't know, colossal spider. It's just a really giant ant person is what it is, but it has a humanoid face. And then there's this version. So are they telling us without telling us? This is Twilight Zone back in 1962. Are they telling us without telling us? Anti-Misfits. Did I put it on there? I did not. So, good example. Are they telling us without telling us? Are they saying, yeah, it's Anti-Misfits. Yeah, that's it. They're super small. Well, he looks, given the size of the beer cans on the ground behind him, I'm going to say he's about the size of a dog. Maybe a border collie or something like that. But if the Xanthi Misfits are a reality, and this isn't made up, I mean, comparatively speaking, between the doorbell guy and the Xanthi Misfits, you're looking at a lot of points of similarities. The big eyes, okay. The humanoid nose, okay. It's a little more puggish, but nonetheless, they got a nose there. And a functional mouth. This guy had lips and all, presumably teeth. This guy has lips and teeth, and apparently he's missing a few too. And I don't know. Are they telling us without telling us? I get that is the theme of this episode. That's the question I'm asking. And it's up to you and me to do our due diligence and find out. And, if it is the fact that they've been telling us without telling us, and this is a real creature that was caught in the door cam that happens to resemble the Xanthi Misfits, what's the story? And P.S., big P.S., I'm going to tout my own stuff here for a second. You saw in the promos during our break, I have a couple of books out. in those books, there is an alien that works with humans. He's human looking himself. No, he's not like a Nordic or anything like that. He's just looks like a regular everyday human, except he has access to incredible technology that's some, millennia or 2 or 5 ahead of Earth's. And he has a longer lifespan and a resistance to most diseases and poisons and stuff like that, just because they had to genetically upgrade themselves. P.S. We'll be talking about that in the next week or two. I want to talk about the potentiality of upgrading the human race and what that may involve. But I kind of lost track of where I was. Oh, Heidi, where was I? Heidi and Sherry, where was I? Because I just totally lost my spot. Put it in the comments, or put it in the chat rather. But okay, so Oh, okay, I know where I was going. So in my books, this alien character was serving on a ship at one point before he was exiled to Earth for crimes he didn't really commit, but really did. But he didn't. It wasn't that big anyway. For crimes. Anyway, but on his ship, he served with a cornucopia of alien life forms that would make Star Wars Cantina look like tea time at the local bakery kind of a thing, because in my, as the writer, in my theorem for creating aliens is to take, for lack of a better term, lesser species. I'm talking anything from spiders, fish, what else do I have? I have raptors. I have these dinosaur-like creatures that kind of look like velociraptors, but they're not. I have badgers. Badgers, full on. The large English badgers. Yeah, the big ones. Or the Canadian. I can't remember now, but they're big. They stand. If you ever put a badger up on its hind legs, it's about 3 or 4 foot tall. Anyway, so there's badgers. I have the Sasquatch in there as an active member or part of these groups. Basically I have some cryptids and some just straight out animals and insects and arachnids that we consider lesser beings or wild creatures or what have you on their various planets where they originate from. They are the apex, like we are here on Earth for the most part. They are the apex. They're the ones who developed, sea travel, air flight, space flight, and eventually interstellar flight. And that's how we all met up and became friends and yada, yada, yada. So his cornucopia is basically, if you take every single creature, potentially a creature on Earth, and you give them the apex status and the ability to learn and become like we are, create societies and writing and language and, spaceships and all that fun stuff. That is who populates the world around us, and we're starting to see maybe that's the case. And I'm not even trying to tell you without telling you, because I just use my imagination. I just figured that was a logical thing. Here on this planet, it was the hairless monkeys that took the reins. On another planet, it could have been a tarantula-like race, which I have in my books. And P.S., I do include the Carl. Carl's and mine is tall white aliens. Yeah, that's right. They're coming up in book 3. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name's Tim Sedano. This has been Paranormal Insight. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next time on Paranormal Insight. If you have a paranormal experience that you would like to discuss on the show,
please email us at paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com. That's paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com.